Heinrich, for the latest on President Trump's Mideast plan with Sudan, normalizing relations with Israel. And I wanted to get your feel, Tal, on how important is this and what should we be focusing on?
Bob, this is huge. It's a big achievement for the Trump administration, for the Netanyahu government, and for the interim military leadership right now in Sudan. You know, we're just about 6 weeks after the Abraham Accords were signed by Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain, right there on the White House South Lawn. And already we have a new Muslim-majority country that wants to normalize its relations with Israel. This is really big. We didn't have, if you remember, a new peace agreement in the region, in the Middle East, for decades. And now we have 3 of them in just 2 months. And, you know, it's a win-win situation for everyone. President Trump announced that Sudan will be removed off the list of state sponsors of terror. It's important for Sudan. It's good for, you know, it wants to appear as a democracy. They want to have ties with the West, to open up to the West. It will help them, of course, economically, to get some debt relief from the International Monetary Fund and so on. So everyone is winning here, and it's part, you know, of a bigger trend that we've been witnessing over the last months.
Yeah, and let, you know, I'm not the expert you are, but the way I look at this is we're not in 1948 anymore. The Palestinian argument, we understand that. I don't want to spend a lot of time discussing that, but it's almost like we've moved forward, and the president is focused on economic development because all of these countries need to develop and support their people. And then also the common enemy many of them have being against Iran, because that can be a threat. So working with Israel serves them well on both fronts, right?
It's true, and it's even bigger when you think about Sudan, because Sudan is a country that used to facilitate, they used to be engaged in arms shipments from Iran to Islamic Jihad and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Over the past few years, there were some attacks within the territory of Sudan on these convoys, and these attacks were attributed to Israel. So unlike the peace with the UAE and Bahrain, in a sense, you can even look at it as an even bigger achievement, because Sudan used to be a country that was hostile to Israel, and many in Israel today view this as, you know, a very symbolic day. Back in 1967, after the war concluded, 8 Arab countries convened in the capital of Sudan and declared, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said today, the big 3 no's of the Arab League: no to recognition of Israel, no to normalization negotiations with Israel, no to peace with Israel. And now we're seeing a shift of the paradigm that peace between Israel and the Palestinians is not a thing that should come first as a condition, you know, to have peace between Israel and different regional players. As you say, Bob, different countries have different interests. And there's another, if I have a bit time, there's another bigger trend that is happening here, if you notice.
Yeah, very quickly, if you would.
Very quickly, that some regional powers understand that the way to Washington is going through Jerusalem. Meaning, if Sudan wants to be removed off the terror list, they have to make, you know, normalization of ties with Israel. The UAE wants F-35 fighter jets. Well, you have to sign a peace agreement with Israel first. So that brings the question, who's next? President Trump said that at least 5 more countries will be next. Maybe Morocco. Maybe, you know, Saudi Arabia, maybe Pakistan, that wants to see more financial aid from the U.S.
That would be interesting. Yeah. Tal, thank you very much. You are a wealth of information. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.